Thank you all and welcome. I'm Gary Null. On our program today, we're going to talk about a very important issue, the issue of coronary heart disease, and a therapy that, well, our guests are going to tell you might help you if you have coronary heart disease. It's called chelation therapy. It's estimated that over 125,000 Americans this year will undergo coronary bypass operations. Well, the coronary bypass people say that chelation therapy is quackery, it's fraudulent. The people who are offering it are bad doctors who should be put out of business. We have people here in the audience who are going to share a different opinion. Stay with us. I hope that this program makes a difference in your life. Hi, welcome back. Medicine has been very critical of innovative practices. Now, this isn't new. This has been the whole history of medicine. But we are living with some double standards, and I'd like to challenge some of those double standards on our program right now. Many doctors, including cardiologists and thoracic surgeons, say that chelation therapy, and you'll find out what that is in a moment, is quackery because it has never been held to rigorous scientific protocols. In other words, there's never been a randomized double-blind study. Then again, when I started doing some investigation on coronary bypass, I found that for 25 years, it has been used on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans without ever being held up to any double-blind randomized studies. When finally studies were done on coronary bypass surgery, it was shown that 75 to 80% of the people undergoing a very serious operation, where as many as 15% of the people over 65 actually die during or right after the operation, should not have had that surgery. That beta blockers or medication was equal in efficacy to the surgery. So it shows that before those individuals start yelling quackery, they should examine the efficacy and safety of their own therapy first. My guests are Dr. Warren Levin and Dr. Muarry Susser, two experts on chelation therapy. Welcome to our program, Dr. Susser.
Thank you, Gary.
Dr. Levin.
Gary, it's great to be here.
Dr. Levin, let's begin with you. First, give us some of your background, what led you up to using chelation therapy, and then describe chelation therapy in lay terms for the people who not have heard of it before.
Gary, I started out as a family doctor. I did board-certified family practice for 15 years, according to what I learned in medical school. And then I found out that I shouldn't let my education interfere with my learning. We learned in medical school that coronary disease, arteriosclerosis in general, is a progressive process that can't be reversed. And I believe that we now know that that isn't true. Does chelation reverse atherosclerosis? We certainly see people who behave as though that's true. We don't have the studies completed, but we are getting them finally.
All right. Dr. Susser, what is chelation therapy?
Well, chelation, the word itself means metal binding. It comes from the Greek word claw, and in medicine it is the drug we use is EDTA, ethylene diamine tetracetic acid. You don't have to remember that. But EDTA is a synthetic amino acid which gets in the bloodstream, hooks on to lead or calcium in this case, also unwanted calcium, binds it and floats it out the kidney. And that way toxic metals like lead and cadmium can be taken out of the body, and unwanted calcium can be changed in nature, and wonderful things happen. So it's given intravenously, and it's anywhere from a 1.5 to 3 hour treatment, depending on how much of a dose you give.
Okay, so let me recapitulate. A person sits for 2 to 3 hours. An intravenous drip solution of a chemical known as EDTA goes into the system. It comes from the Greek meaning chele, which is claw-like.
Yeah.
Let's say that in your artery there's a buildup that's shrinking the passage of blood, narrows it so you can't get blood through. This starts to break down some of that, takes this, now that it's bound it, takes it out through the kidneys. You measure then the minerals in the kidneys so you know which good minerals to put back into the system so they don't end up running a deficiency of good minerals.
It's not that smart. It's not smart enough to avoid taking out zinc and other unwanted
things. At the same time, doesn't it also allow for free radical scavenging. Free radicals are unstable molecules which can destroy cells, and this helps engulf those free radicals so that you have less of these aging devices in your system.
Yeah, that wasn't the original concept, but now it's coming to mind that the free radicals, the highly reactive chemicals that cause damage in the cells, are reduced by EDTA chelation therapy.
I'd like to say that that's a simplistic way of putting it, that really the calcium, for instance, that is actually bound by the EDTA is the calcium that's in the blood. And as you reduce the calcium in the blood, the body has to pull calcium out of the tissue. The EDTA can't go up and grab that calcium that's in the wall and take it out.
All right. What are some of the other things that chelation can do?
Chelation, the way we practice it, is part of a total program, Gary, and that's where people like you come in and educate the public about the importance of their nutrition. The American diet, the standard American diet, that's SAD, is a sad diet. And we feel that chelation is a program. So we've got to change the way people eat. They have to learn exercise within the limitations that their illnesses impose. We think supplements are enormously important. And anybody who's listened to your program knows all about that. And then, with all of those things, chelation therapy helps people to be healthy. And in 15 years of being a family doctor, I can't look back and think of 10 people that I treated who really came out of that treatment well and healthy, except for infections. Now, I see people who have been chronically sick. I don't fix them. The body has this miraculous capacity to fix itself, providing that you give it all the pieces. And chelation helps to balance it. Specifically, aging tissue has been shown unequivocally to have increasing amounts of calcium accumulating inside at the expense of other important minerals such as magnesium. And what we do is literally reverse that aging tendency in all of the tissues in the body.
That would be one of the reasons some people have claimed that memory loss is improved with chelation therapy. Have you heard that?
I think I heard it, but I can't remember. As a matter of fact, I had that very experience myself when I started chelation on myself, and I didn't think I had a memory problem. But I think it's extraordinary the number of symptoms that people find going away as they gain good health.
What are some of those?
Well, lots of symptoms. Of course, general well-being, skin conditions. Like the skin looks 5 or 10 years younger. And all the women, I'd be interested in that. But the skin looks 5 or 10 years younger in people who've been chelated.
Women? Women alone?
Women alone.
Every guy I know spends hours in the mirror wants to get 30 years old. Is that a wrinkle?
A few men. Now, recently, I've spoken with Claire Patterson from Caltech. Really outstanding, brilliant, world-class type scientist, been studying lead for over 20 years. He has evidence that the average American, average Western civilized person has over 1,000 times more lead in the body than human beings had 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. When you take this with two other facts, one, that the Environmental Protection Agency has published an article which shows that there is an enormous amount of disease caused by excess lead in the body, just in children and in people with high blood pressure and heart disease. And you go to Switzerland and take Walter Blumer's study, in which he studied over 250 people in one group and then had two comparison groups, and showed that over an 18-year period, listen to this now, over an 18-year period, the people who got chelated 6 times a year had 90% less cancer and 55% less heart disease, compared to the other group which he tried to make identical. And he did a lot of sophisticated work with this. So cancer, heart disease, skin.
And more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Gary Null. Dr. Muarry Susser and Dr. Warren Levin are here. We're talking about chelation therapy. Well, let's just recapitulate, and then we're going to the audience for their questions and comments. Chelation therapy is being used by anywhere from 300 to 700 doctors right now. These are board-certified people, or at least they're certified by a group of doctors who have specialized in chelation therapy. Their organization is called the American Academy of Medical Preventics, and we'll tell you a little bit more about them later. It's a controversial subject because a lot of doctors see it as competition. After all, if you can get this inexpensive intravenous drip solution, and after 20 or 30 treatments of about $90 to $110 a treatment, you get well, then why would you go out and spend $20,000 to $40,000 on a coronary bypass operation, which could end your life, which in 75 to 80% of the cases has been shown not to be efficacious and certainly is not safe? Well, you have a battle going on. We're trying to sort out some of the characters in this battle. Now we're going to the audience and see what questions you might have. Please, who has a question they'd like to ask? Stand up, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to ask whether chelation can be indicated or used for other illnesses besides the coronary, besides a heart condition like arthritis.
All right, good question, thank you.
Arthritis is one of the free radically aggravated conditions, and we certainly do see remarkable improvement in many cases of arthritis. Obviously, this is not a panacea, but we get dramatic improvement, and rheumatoid arthritis is one of the ones that has been published in the American literature as being responsive to chelation therapy.
Have you ever had someone come in who had a really degenerative condition, who had tried all traditional therapies, nothing worked, and through chelation therapy alone improved?
I think one of my most dramatic cases was a patient who came all the way from Israel. After 10 weeks in one of the top hospitals in Israel, a 34-year-old man with diabetic ulcer of his foot was discharged with the ulcer still draining. They couldn't fix it. They were going to amputate his foot. His family insisted that he come to New York, and in less than 3 weeks that ulcer closed with chelation therapy. We certainly have a lot of patients who've been told they're walking time bombs, and we've defused those time bombs with chelation therapy, and they go on to stop having angina and lead healthy lives. Their cholesterol comes down. Bypass surgery doesn't correct the problem. It's a temporary patch job. You got 30,000 miles of arteries in your body, and if you bypass 5 inches, what about the other 29,999 and 9/10? The answer is you've got to do something to change the chemistry in the body, and chelation program is one of the things that does that.
All right. Another question in the audience, please.
I had a heart attack in 1976, and the conventional doctors put me on a whole series of prescription drugs, and they practically gave up on me. But after a year or so of this condition, I discovered Dr. Levin, who prescribed chelation therapy for me, and it's done me a great deal of good ever since then. And incidentally, as regards this gentleman's question, it was discovered that I had a very severe case of lead and cadmium poisoning, and that was cured up too. Now, for a 75-year-old person such as I think I've done pretty well with chelation therapy.
Okay.
You should see him ice skate.
Yes, sir. You?
Yes. My name's John Fiore. I've had a triple bypass many years ago, and about 4 years after the bypass, all the angina returned almost as severely as it was when I first got the bypass. So I too have heard about Dr. Levin, and I've been going there for 4 years, had many chelation therapies. I can walk now where I couldn't before. I've gone back to business again, where I had to give up my business because I couldn't function. And I too had lead poisoning so severe that it was hard for me to read a sentence without remembering. I couldn't remember what I read. And I feel great.
Good, thank you. Dr. Susser, what has been some of your experience, your more unique cases?
Well, some of them are just so mind-boggling. For example, a professor at college who just couldn't remember, he was diabetic also, he couldn't remember his lessons. And he was 55 years old, he still had a lot of productive years left, and he didn't want to do chelation, he thought it was nonsense. His family prevailed on him. He came very reluctantly, no placebo effect here. And after 20 chelations, he went back to work. I mean, there was a lot of interim stuff in there, but he was back to normal. It was just so spectacular. And this was a guy whose life was over with ordinary medicine. He'd been to lots of doctors. Said, you're diabetic, your vascular system is shot, you're done. Now he's back.
What have you done to actually prove the chelation therapy works? Are there studies that can show it's not in a person's mind, it's not in your interpretation, which may be wrong, that there's actually improvement in the circulation for people with gangrene or poor venous supply, that there's better circulation to the brain with a post-stroke victim, that people who've had calcification of tissue or osteoporosis have improved? Does that data exist?
Yes.
Absolutely. The problem is that it hasn't been done according to the, quote, official standard, which is a double-blind, randomly controlled study. There's no law that says that's the only thing that works. You can have a case study of one if you have an abnormal electrocardiogram that reverts to normal. What the argument is how do we know that wasn't coincidence? When you've repeated this coincidence 300,000 times, it begins to be less coincidental. In spite of that, we have now, as an academy, by the way, we've changed the name of our academy. It's now the American College of Advancement in Medicine. The academy, I believe, is the first time that a non-pharmaceutical money supply has been given to test the drug. The reason this drug has never been tested is that it's beyond patent rights. No pharmaceutical company is interested in putting up the money to do the test because they can't make any profit. So we doctors and our patients got the money together. We went to the FDA. The FDA has given us an investigational new drug number, and they've said, when the results of this study are out, if they confirm efficacy, we will change the package insert for you. We're pretty sure that we're going to get a new change package insert in about 2 years, and then I think everybody will say, well, we knew it all the time. I'm glad you proved it to us.
Wasn't it also true that Abbott Laboratories had been using chelation therapy for years when they owned the patent to it, and one of the conditions was atherosclerosis?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It used to be on the package insert.
But after they lost the patent, no more. We'll be back with closing thoughts right after these messages. Stay with us. Welcome back. Dr. Warren Levin, Dr. Muarry Susser, we're talking about chelation therapy. Unfortunately, what you've probably heard about chelation therapy is that it's unproven, it's unscientific, and that it's quackery. Worse still, you've probably been told that it prevents you from getting quality, proven therapy that would help you. Well, what has helped people? Certainly coronary bypass surgery, which is the major surgery right now performed, the most serious advanced surgery in the United States, has not helped the majority of people who've received it. In fact, one recent study actually showed just this week, it showed that when a doctor didn't do anything to a group that had been told they had to have coronary bypass, they actually got better than the group that had the coronary bypass. So
Doing nothing was better than
doing
bypassing.
nothing was better. Some closing thoughts, Dr. Levin.
Well, I think one of the things that's really important is doctors are supposed to relieve symptoms. Patients come to the doctor because of angina. That means that the heart is not getting enough oxygen to the muscle. The surgeon goes in there and he can do damage so that an area that was partially getting enough is no longer getting it at all, and his pain goes away. And a lot of the pain of surgery relief is the result of increased injury so that the marginal areas are no longer functioning. In addition to that, there is a study which showed that every patient who underwent coronary bypass had impaired brain function following it for up to a year.
Dr. Susser?
I just want to say quickly that I think EDTA is the most spectacular product on the market since penicillin. It may be the major breakthrough since penicillin. It's taken a long time to evidence it, but the new studies will begin that, and I think it will start a whole class of drugs like antibiotics, except it'll be much better for you.
All right, if people want more information on chelation therapy, how could they reach you?
At the World Health Medical Group in New York, Warren Levin, 212-696-1900.
Thank you both very much for being with us. I'm Gary Null. I hope this has made a difference in declouding some of the mystery around a very important therapy. We'll be back next week with more on health and nutrition.